Hey guys, welcome back to some Gilded Guardians. Today's video, we're going to be looking at the Guardians themselves, and I want to start this off with the tanking class. Now, overall, when it comes to the tanking class, if your tank dies, the chances are you're going to go ahead and lose the battle. I want to sort this, and we're going to filter and sort the Guardians by the tanks. I want to run through the tanks that we have availability to right now. And of course, if you're building out or if you have ascended tanks, unfortunately, I do not have any at this point. We're hoping to get some in the future, but I want to show you the tanks that I currently have. Give me your recommendation as well to which tank we should be using and exactly why. So let's go ahead and run through this. So the first one we have is Grind. Now Grind is a Terra strength, as you can see, keeper tank. Overall, looking at the skills, he has the ability to root himself in place, which is pretty good because of course this is going to give him a little bit of damage. And of course the increases HP recovery to 50%. So he does have a pretty good HP recovery when he is grounded with Earth Spike. Now in print, applies a Nature's Mark to grind that lasts for 6 seconds, giving him HP equal to damage. So you can see this is capped, receive damage to 240%, meaning that as he takes damage, he's going to have the ability to heal himself, which of course is vital to keeping the tank alive. And then I do like Second Chance. I've actually won a couple battles with this. 9 seconds after dying, he is going to be revived. And as you can see right there, it is going to be 50% of the HP that he comes back with. Essentially, I have had him die early in battle. Second tank or sub tank might pick up some of the enemies. He comes back a couple seconds later and he starts tanking again, which works incredibly well with using Grind. Now we also have Tusgr right here. He is a Hydra's Keeper tank, so very similar. Now the thing to notice with him is he does provide a little bit of crowd control, which does help. I was using him for a considerable amount of time, and I might actually go back to him. I did get Grind built up a little bit more with some more of the copies, but this provides a little bit of crowd control, a little bit of the damage. Now looking at Ice Shield, this reduces, as you can see, summons an Ice Shield hit by an enemy, deals 85% of the attack and physical damage, reducing their defense. So there's a big defense reduction with this hero. However, it seemed like when I ran Grind in formations, he was actually surviving a lot more than I seen with this hero. This hero was dying a lot faster, and I tested these out quite a bit. And overall, this hero allowed me to do more damage, and of course had that crowd control AoE aspect. But of course, he died faster than the Arctic Wolf. Now, this is pretty neat that you do have 30% of his stats. The Arctic Wolf overall, when he came into battle, it would die pretty quick, or it didn't seem like he was doing much damage since one of his main abilities, this passive ability of having this wolf, it seemed like, again, that it died out pretty quick. Now, this Telva is the tank that I actually started with. Now, one thing I noticed with her, again, survivability issues as we were going through content, even looking at most of her abilities, she does have a knockback rate here, but overall, when it comes to the defensive nature or the defensive aspect that I look for in a tank, it wasn't there, because even with the taunt, is when she did the taunt for nearby enemies, that would usually mean that Telva was dead. As soon as this taunt went up, if she's taunting 2, 3, 4, even 5 enemies, it means that she is completely dead at that point, unfortunately not having the mitigation. Guard was a really good one because you can link from a back hero, but of course the back hero, he takes, or Telva takes, half of the damage the back hero would have taken, and of course that means that Telva does die a little bit quicker. Now the other tanks that I haven't used yet, we have Brun. Brun seems like a very strong warrior. You can see it as a Cinder Redeemer tank. But overall, looking at here, become invincible to damage that is more than 4% of your max HP for 10 seconds. This could be pretty good when you're having a really strong burst team. I'm going to have to try out Brun. He is actually one we just summoned, if you remember, but I don't have any more enlightened copies to actually build him up a little bit further. Now looking at Barrage, this again is just a damage ability. Vigor does raise his HP, so again, that makes me a little bit curious if we should be using Brun in a couple of formations, because it seems like if I can not only mitigate the defensive rate here, but a passive to go ahead and increase his HP, as long as I have a healer to essentially shield or support this hero, it seems like the viability for this hero might be good. But overall, like I said, with some of the other ones, I don't have any additional copies to actually Radiant Brun, which means we're getting a very low basic copy. Because even when you look here at the HP on this side, hero has 6,000 HP, just looking kind of at the info, looking at 6,000 HP. And then you start getting into some of the heroes that we do have up to a little bit more of the enlightenment. There's 8,000, 8,600, 8,640. You can see the attack and defense a little higher. So I think maybe using a subpar Brun versus using some of the heroes, and especially with grind, because I have grind at 5 stars at this point, would make a really big difference. And this was another one. This one's super interesting. Now, this is another Terra tank, which part of the Redeemers, you have to know this. When you start looking at the classifications of the specific Guardians, Terra Strength Redeemers tank, when you're going through a lot of this content, you are going to get relics that are required or relics that are very specific to what heroes you have. You want to make sure, again, that you do know the classifications. Now, looking at these skills, it was pretty interesting. So AoE, so he's doing AoE damage. We do have some crowd control. And then Safeguard was the interesting one because this could actually give you a little bit of a damage reduction. For every enemy with less than 30% HP increases the damage reduction, which means the enemy is pretty low at that point. And unfortunately, if the enemies have a lot of HP, this isn't going to do anything, in my opinion. I mean, just reading this, doesn't seem like this is going to have a really big effect if you're going in here and essentially none of the enemies have or are triggering this damage reduction. Could be kind of a lose-lose right there. Now, again, looking at grind, he is the tank that I have chosen to go with. Again, it might not be the best one. As you can see, we're not really tank heavy with the ones we have, but for the Enlightenment, we did get a couple copies of him very, very early. We actually got a couple free copies out of summons, meaning that I could build him all the way up to the 5 stars. Now for him, so some of the heroes right here, the purple or the epic heroes, I am not going to ascend, even though it's relatively cheap to go ahead and ascend the tank. I got to figure out which one we're exactly going to use, because if we end up going with Brun versus using grind, and of course we'd have the ability possibly to get some additional tanks in here, because when you start looking at the big picture of what we have in like the Guardian decks, when you start looking at the tanking class in here, you can see there's a lot that we have not acquired, and unfortunately we don't have any of these. Now, a lot of these we cannot get. So what I mean by this is, you can see right here, this says early adopter. The early adopter tanks are not available. They are not available short of purchasing them. So if you're putting real life money into the game, if you're purchasing these on Token Trove, it is the only way that you can get them. Even looking at Cyrus, again, this is a founder. So early we cannot get, founder we cannot get, founder we cannot get, unfortunately, with Freya. And Freya was one that I absolutely loved right down here. And then, of course, looking at the other tank right here, early with Aurent. And then we do have a founder right here. So we're starting to get into some of the founders. Generation 1 we can get. So the Generation 1, and again, I don't know if it's going to come from the summons. So the Generation 1, I understand that we can get the core one, we can get the Generation 1, and that is it. So again, when it comes to building out the tanks in the entirety, the ability to actually get a legendary tank out of the Guardian decks does not exist. So the 4 that we currently have available right here, we cannot get at all. And again, we're not putting any more money into this. We did buy the energy stone that we absolutely wanted. We just got into a guild as well. Big shout out to the brand new guild. But again, looking at these 4 heroes that we have here, we cannot get any of these short of purchasing them. And of course, with them being the early and them being the founder, they are very expensive. When you start looking at $100+ for a single hero, and even looking, like I said, I liked Freya. It was one of the original ones. We beta tested this, but looking at Freya runs about $250+ for one single hero. So again, I know top players in here definitely could hop in and just buy some of the heroes, but overall, with me not putting a ton of money into the game, we don't have the ability. So again, let me know what you guys think about the tanks in this game, exactly who we should be building out just based on the ones that I have. And again, I'm kind of leaning between Grind and between Brun, but we're going to have to see exactly how they both perform. And of course, with Brun, we need 2 more copies to get him on the same level that we have with Grind. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.